Hey guys, Helen Hartsmith here again with
Kathy.
and you know what a split screen means? We're together,
Sort of.
together.
Sort of.
and and it's time for a
Top 10.
top 10.
Yeah.
So, Kathy,
Helen.
do you want to talk about what this top 10, what the subject is?
Yeah, so this is the top 10, is it public pagans prior to
No, it's elders.
elders?
Top 10 elders pre.
Why did you put this on me when obviously I'm wrong?
Because I'm trying to give you an opportunity to talk. So it's top 10 elders that are pre 1990. Kathy and
Some
I.
of these were active after 1990, but their beginning was prior to 1990.
Exactly. Yes. So for us, Kathy and I feel that it's super important to know where we came from as Wiccans, as pagans. And so we definitely encourage our students to know elders. That's actually part of assignments for them. And so we thought that it would be fun. We have plans to do 2 top 10s. This will be the first one. So these are elders that were active. They started their career, I guess, or whatever, before 1990.
And some of them way before 1990.
Way before 1990.
So let's talk a little bit about why it's important that our students and that people who practice Wicca, witchcraft, whatever you want to call yourself, study these things. So our practice, the practice of paganism, Wicca, witchcraft, has been changing and evolving over the centuries, right? It's been a couple now. And there have been some changes made. Some of them are due to societal pressure. Some of them have been due to historical finds where they've, were able to find some histories and maybe about mythology or practices of ancient cultures or whatever. So it's important to know where we came from and to revisit those ideas and the people who told us about them, who taught about them, so that we can, like with anything, determine the relevancy of it. So I'm a big proponent of have your belief. That's great. Have your belief. Know why you believe it.
Right. Because let's face it, another thing that really drives where we are on our path is the fact that in some cases, there is no history or very little history. And so what really happened was in like the 50s, 60s, folks like Gerald Gardner and Alex Saunders, they created what is known as neo-paganism, the New Age movement, things like that. And so they were the ones that were actually coming up with, what we do, a lot of what we do today. And some things may or may not have been applicable historically, but it is the foundation of what modern Wicca is. And so it's important to understand that history. So because it has shaped who we are as pagans today, and given us validation for our own personal gnosis that we experience every day as we traverse our path.
One more thing I do want to say about these people who created Wicca or witchcraft or neo-paganism, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of contention as to some of these people claimed that they were hereditary witches and that they were inducted into witchcraft by their parents or their grandparents. And a lot of these people, we don't have any proof of that.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that what they have to teach is not valid.
Right.
Because they still had a practice that they came up with, whether they were taught it or whether they developed it. That doesn't make it any less valid. And again, in my opinion, go out there, learn what it is, but then verify it for yourself. What works for you? Right. Learn about some of these people we're talking about today, and you might find some grains of goodies in there that you can use in your personal practice. You might take a look at it and go, oh, this is just ridiculous. Why did they even think this? But at least it helps you to fine-tune your belief system in your own personal gnosis.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay, so all that being said, are we ready to jump into the list?
Sure.
Okay. So Kathy told me that I have to start. So, and again, no
particular order.
No particular order. These are just some elders that we feel like everybody should at least know of, and what they're contributing to our modern movement. Faith, whatever. So the first person on the list is Helena Blavatsky. Helena Blavatsky was born in 1831, and she is one of those people that Kathy mentioned has a real controversial history when it comes to what she gave to paganism. She was born in an aristocratic Russian Germanic family, and she was born in Russia. She was an occultist, she was a philosopher, and she was an author, and she was also the co-founder of the Theosophical Society that was started in 1875. She gained an international following as a it's a hard word, theosophist. Whew. And and she was also involved in esoteric work. And so I'm trying to remember, Isis Unveiled was one of her really popular works. She really set the stage for a lot of New Age thinking in terms of like that Victorian era that was really popular to have seances and things like that. And she also laid a lot of groundwork for folks like Aleister Crowley with the Golden Dawn and things like that. So she might be controversial, but she is a conversation in and of herself. So I'm trying to keep it like
she is.
Trying to keep it tight.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. There's I mean, it's possible that she was kind of a con artist on some but like you said, she did open up the way for the New Age moment. And New Age, we're talking about the late 1800s New Age movement. Yeah,
so this is the Victorian era when seances were incredibly popular throughout Europe and things like that. So yeah, this is definitely her time period for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So moving forward a little bit in history, we're going to talk about Gerald Gardner, who is someone everyone should at least know something a little bit about. Blavatsky might be a little more obscure, but Gardner, that really everyone should know who Gardner is. He was born.
There's an entire tradition named after him.
Gardnerian, right? He was born in 1884, and he was an English Wiccan. So he was an amateur anthropologist and archaeologist, which led him to look into things like witchcraft and the history of paganism and such. He was born into an upper middle class family in Lancashire, and if I slaughter these British pronunciations, I heartily apologize. He spent a lot of his childhood abroad. He worked as a civil servant. He retired in 1936, so a lot of his paganism stuff happened after he retired. He joined an occult group, the Rosicrucian Order of Crotonia Fellowship. So through that, he came in contact with the New Forest Coven, and he was initiated into that in 1939. So that was believed to be a surviving cult, witchcraft cult of the pre-Christian, that it had somehow made it through Christianity, which is obviously really in doubt. But I mean, how do you know? How do you know? It was so secret. It's very possible it could have been, or it might not have been. How do you know? So this coven was discussed in the works of Margaret Murray, which I don't think she's on our list.
I think Margaret Murray worked, if I remember correctly, I think she worked a bit with Helena Blavatsky. I think, though, they kind of get put together quite a bit, or at the same time period. So...
Right. So, given all of that information, he decided to revive the faith. And he supplemented the coven rituals with ideas borrowed from Freemasonry, from ceremonial magic, and Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
And using all three of those things, he formed the Gardnerian tradition, which is a very popular witchcraft tradition today. He moved to London in 1945. He started attracting media attention. He wrote High Magic's Aid, Witchcraft Today, which is one of the first witchcraft books that I read. It's been released in many incarnations since 1954, but yeah. And he founded a Wicca group known as the Bricketwood Coven. And there were a lot of people in that era that he brought into that coven, including Doreen Valiente, Louis Bourne, Patricia Crowther, a bunch of others. And through this forming of Gardnerian, this spread through the U.S., through Australia. Let's see. He also became the director of the Museum of Magic and Witchcraft on the Isle of Man, which would be a lovely road trip if it still exists. Nope, it ran until his desk. Beth, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I want to say that a lot of his possessions might have ended up back with Doreen at some point, or I remember hearing about some of his possessions and where they ended up.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, because of his work in bringing witchcraft back to the popular zeitgeist, he is internationally recognized as the father of witchcraft, of Wicca, and among the pagan and occult communities. So he's just a fascinating guy. He had lots of information out there. He wrote several very groundbreaking books at the time. So he's definitely someone who should be looked into and studied by anyone who is practicing witchcraft, paganism, Wicca.
And again, you might not. His philosophies might not speak to you, but it's cool to know and important to know the contributions that he made to the faith. You know, very interesting gentleman. And that leads right into the next person on the list, and that's Doreen Valiente. Doreen was born in 1922. She's considered an English Wiccan. And she was really responsible for writing a lot of what we look at as the liturgical writings for Wicca, and Gardnerian Wicca specifically. She is the one who wrote The Charge of the Goddess, and I believe she wrote The Charge of the God as well. So a lot of those, what's that?
At least one form, yeah.
Right. So she was very much known for being an author and a poet, and she has written a number of books herself. She was born to a middle-class family in Surrey, and she started practicing magic as a teenager. After the Second World War, she met Gerald Gardner, and was made the high priestess of the Bricket Wood Coven. And she helped him produce, adapt, write all of the texts for Wicca at that time. And so because of that, she's known as, Gardner is the father of Wicca. She's known as the mother of Wicca. This past year, I read one of her books. You gotta walk the walk and talk the talk. So, we say, know your elders. And so it's important that we ourselves read these things as well. And it's so interesting. That book was written like in the 50s, and so many of the ideas that she talked about are in what I've been taught, what I believe, what I have, experienced. And so, yeah, there was a lot of things that I had already been exposed to in that book, but there were nuggets of things that I hadn't learned, including a divination system using crystals that I plan on, where I have my 13 crystals, and I want to work with them as my form of divination this year. So it's definitely interesting. She worked with a lot of people, including Robert Cochran, who is a personal favorite of mine. And she worked with him as he was kind of putting together the clan of Tubal-Cain. She definitely had her own opinion of things. Her and Gerald Gardner might have started off strong and had a great relationship, but they split ways after a while. And that book, it was very interesting how she would talk about Gerald Gardner, which, you could tell that they didn't part ways nicely, I guess I'll say. She also knew the Ferrers. Janet and Stuart Ferrer, worked with them, Evan John Jones, and things of that nature. She eventually died from pancreatic cancer in 1999, just shy of seeing the new age. But she's definitely someone who is super important to witchcraft, modern witchcraft.
So next we have the only person on this list who is still living.
Not necessarily by design.
Selena Fox is a very influential pagan. She was born in 1949. She is a Wiccan priestess. She runs the, it's not on this.
Circle Sanctuary.
Thank you. Circle Sanctuary in Wisconsin, I believe it is. That is a very large facility. They do a lot of teaching. They have a convention, pagan convention every year. She's also an interfaith minister, an environmentalist, an author, lecturer. She is a trained counselor and psychotherapist, and she has been out as a pagan forever. Forever.
And that's what I love about her.
Yeah. She's never been in the closet. She posted something, or somebody posted something on her Facebook page that was from a People magazine in the 70s where she was running a ritual. I was like, dang.
There's a really cool documentary out there, and I've talked about it before. And it's a young Selena Fox without her white hair, a full-on brunette, very young, leading a ritual out, in the woods. And it is gorgeous to see her.
She comes to Convocation every year, and we always take something that she does. She's amazing. She travels the world. She works a lot with interfaith. She just does a lot for the pagan Wiccan religions. She began leading rituals in 1971 and has done public education about paganism since 1973, She does media interviews, just, it's amazing. She is heavily involved, if she didn't create the Lady Liberty League, which was involved in getting the pentacle on the veterans' headstones. Because prior to that, the pentacle was not an option. You had to go with one of the more Christian or Jewish symbols. She's involved. They have a green burial site at Circle Sanctuary where she's been very involved in the green burials. She's just amazing. She is phenomenal. She has podcasts. She does YouTube videos. She's very active on Facebook. She's someone, it's not hard to find her. And I heartily recommend just listen to the woman. She is amazing. She's amazing.
You know what I think is like the craziest thing about her? You know, she ran, there was a magazine. I can't remember what the magazine was called.
Circles something.
Yeah. Yeah, so I believe she did a lot of writing for the magazine, but one thing that I am so surprised by is that she's never published a book.
Right. I was going to say that, actually. She just hasn't. There are a lot of articles out there that she has written. And her thesis, when she graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, was When Goddess is God, Pagans, Recovery, and Alcoholics Anonymous. So, I mean, it's out there. You can find stuff. But she does a lot more verbal things. Like I said, she's on tons of podcasts.
Action. Yeah. She's like the action, the activist. That's what I think of her as.
Yeah, she has been very active for paganism, witchcraft, Wicca since the 70s, and she is amazing.
Yes, for sure. For sure. So next on the list is Alex Saunders. Alex Saunders is another one of those big. We've already mentioned his name in this list, or before getting into the list. He was born in 1926. He is another English occultist, and he is another person that has a tradition that is named after him. He is the founder of the Alexandrian Wicca. He was inducted into the Gardnerian tradition by Gerald Gardner before founding the Alexandrian tradition in the 60s. He was born and raised in a working class family. I think that's an interesting thing to look at as far as the background of these people and the circumstances that they were raised in. And it's across the spectrum. Helena Blavatsky was born to an aristocratic family. Gerald Gardner, again, I believe it was in there that there was some aristocracy. And then we've got working class people like Alex Saunders and Doreen Valiente. And as a young man, he began working as a medium in the local spiritualist churches before going on to study and practice ceremonial magic. And so he's another one of those folks that were just instrumental in this New Age movement and bringing us down through to where we are today. He married Maxine Saunders, and was declared to be king of the witches by his followers, something that led to other prominent Gardnerian witches, such as Patricia Crowther and Eleanor Boone, to attack him in the press. There was definitely some rubbing friction that happened between some of these folks, but I mean, I think that's kind of going to happen when you're basically founding all of this new stuff. So, yeah.
Didn't he move to the U.S. eventually, or am I thinking of a different pagan?
I'm looking through here really quick. I don't have anything here. He died in 88. Yeah, Yeah, he may have, but it's not in the information that I have here.
I could be wrong. So the next person on our list is Scott Cunningham. Now, Scott wrote the second book that I read on witchcraft, The Guide to the Solitary Practitioner, and the further Guide to the Solitary Practitioner. He was very active. It doesn't say what year, but he was born in 1956, so I assume it was the 70s. He was very active. He actually was very prolific in writing. He had the Solitary Practitioner and the Further Guide. There are also a lot of correspondence books. I believe there's some on oils and herbs, and there's a lot of informative information out there on him. He was very, very influential to me in my practices, and I think to a lot of pagans who, started witchcraft in the 80s. He was a friend with notable occultists and Wiccans such as Raymond Buckland, and he was a member of the Serpent Stone family and received his 3rd degree as a member of that coven. He was very, very influential at that time, and definitely worth looking into. He passed away in 93.
One thing I didn't realize that it didn't make it into these little notes that I put together. One thing that I had not heard of was that he was born in Royal Oak, Michigan.
Was he really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I was actually speaking with a friend of mine when I was putting these together. I was speaking with Leanne, and I was like, oh, he was born in Royal Oak, and we were talking. I was like, he was so influential for me because he literally wrote a book on just about every subject. Mm-hmm. I have his spell books. I have his crystal book. I have his plant book, and I still reference them.
And while he wasn't the first person to come out and say you don't need to be brought in by a coven, he was like the loudest one I saw when I was getting into it, because the Gardnerians and the Alexandrians, it's all, you have to be brought in by a coven. You have to be
right.
The word is,
well,
what is the word?
Self-dedication.
No, the word when you brought in by a coven, it's not
you're initiated.
Initiated. Thank you. So many prior to that where you have to be initiated by somebody else. But oh my God, I'm sorry. Words are not working very well.
It's okay.
Cunningham.
Well,
was very much, you can do it yourself. You don't need somebody else to teach you. Listen to yourself. Listen to what's in here. Listen to the universe, and that will lead you to where you need to go. And that was so, so awesome for me, because when I started paganism, it was me in the dark in my kitchen. And I knew nobody who was pagan. And it was very much frowned upon.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I remember it was his self-dedication ritual from the Solitary Practitioner book that you and I did together in the Circle of Trees.
Are you sure? Because I thought it was the Circle of Trees later.
I thought that we did it in the Circle of Trees. Because I remember being outside. I remember being outside.
It was 20 some years ago.
I know. and his tool cleansing and dedication is what I still use to this day.
We still use a lot of stuff from him. He's very, very good. I don't know that there is anything that I could recognize from his stuff that that we don't necessarily still use in some form or fashion.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I mean, his that Living Wicca book, that's required reading for our students.
Yep.
And thank goodness it's still in print.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know what the number of printing is, but yeah, it's still out there.
Thankfully. Okay, so moving on. There is so much that can be said about the next person on this list, and I'm going to try to keep it small and concise, and that's Aleister Crowley. Crowley. There's different pronunciations. Born in 1875, he was an English occultist, ceremonial magician, poet, painter, novelist, and mountaineer. He was the founder of the Thelema. He was also the founder of the Golden Dawn. I mean, this guy, or I'm sorry, no, he is not the founder. He joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in 1898, where he was trained in ceremonial magic. This guy has a ton of writings out there. He is known for his work in ceremonial magic. This is one person that I'm kind of weak in because I haven't read any of his stuff. He was known for writing in such a way that you had to have a certain brain power.
You had to think about it. It was very,
right.
very mind engaging.
Yes.
Which school had a class on his Book of the Law, which I took and loved. And it's like he used language in such a way that made you have to really think about what he was saying to get to the meat of it.
Yes.
And because of that, a lot of his writings are misunderstood. And he's very much looked at like the devil himself by a lot of spiritual Christian people.
Yeah, and I think it's because of that. I think I'm a bit intimidated by his work. And is just, it's that whole ceremonial thing too. It's not necessarily my bag. But he's definitely someone that shaped where we are today as pagans, as Wiccans, as ceremonial mages.
Whether most people want to admit it or not.
Exactly. For sure. Sure.
Very, very,
and I guess,
very notorious, very much notorious. He was just very much, the devil. He was the devil.
Yeah.
And even who's it? Ozzy has Mr. Crowley, the song. It's still in pop culture today that he is this evil person where really, he was trying to be controversial, but if you really read his stuff, it's not as bad as people think it is.
Yeah.
So the next person we want to talk about is Raymond Buckland, who was born in 1834. This might be the one that I was thinking moved to America. He was an English writer on Wicca and the occult, and a very significant person in the history of Wicca. He was a high priest in both the Gardnerian and I'm going to not pronounce this correctly, Shea Wicca.
I think that's right.
I think it is. I think he was a founder, of the Shea Wicca tradition. Mm-hmm. He was the first person in the United States to openly admit to being a practitioner of Wicca, and he introduced Gardnerian Wicca to the United States in 1964. He had been initiated by Gerald Gardner and his then high priestess, Monique Wilson. He developed Shea Wicca, and then this next paragraph is not for this person, but Raymond Buckland, he wrote, if I'm not mistaken, he wrote the big blue book of the Bible, the Witchcraft Bible.
The big blue book and the big red book.
There's some stuff in there with any of the traditions like Gardnerian, Alexandrian. There's things like flogging. There's a lot of ceremonial stuff in there that is not a part of our practice. That's not to say that it's not valuable in any way. It could prove very valuable for other people, just not me.
Mm-hmm.
The blue book is super informative. I haven't read the whole thing, but I have looked through it quite extensively. He was very influential in America, even up until his death, which was in 2017. So not that long ago.
Right. Yeah. Next on the list is Edain McCoy. I'm not entirely sure how her first name is pronounced. I'm looking through this information that I found on her, and it's not really doing it for me. But the reason that we wanted to put her on this list is because of her body of work. Edain wrote more than 20 books on metaphysical and occult topics, and she is the author of Summerland, which was a pivotal book in helping me deal with the afterlife in terms of being a pagan. Wrote beautiful rituals in that book that just really resonated with me. And her other titles are just as well written, just as interesting. How to do automatic writing, karmic and past life tarot. She did one of the Sabbath books. I don't remember which one it was, though, that set that Llewellyn put out first. She wrote one of those Sabbath books. She did advanced witchcraft, tons and tons of subjects, and it's her work that really kind of helped further the movement. She was first published in 1993, and I know that she has passed.
Just last year.
Yeah, I thought it was relatively recent. I know that she was connected with Circle Sanctuary and Selena Fox. They worked together a lot. Edain was a priestess of Briad. Did a lot of work with her and the Celtic movement, as far as that reconstructioning of what the Celtic tradition was, or was the neo-Celtic tradition was going to look like for a modern day practitioner. She was involved in paranormal work. I wish that I had known of her prior to her death. I mean, I had her books, but didn't really get into her until after her death.
Didn't she had convocation one year?
I don't remember her being at convocation. That doesn't mean that she wasn't there.
Right.
But I don't remember her being there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But definitely someone whose body of work is definitely worth checking out.
Right. Definitely. So the last person on our list is Starhawk. She's an American writer, teacher, activist. She was very much into feminist neo-paganism and ecofeminism. She's still alive.
Oh, maybe she is still alive.
Yeah, she's still alive.
Oh, that's two then. Yay.
So her, she's a columnist on BeliefNet.com. She wrote a book called The Spiral Dance in 1979, which is a phenomenal book that a lot of people really look to, and it really brought out the goddess movement and the goddess religion. So that's definitely a must read on the list. It was put out in 1979.
Wasn't she also involved with the Pagan Book of Living and Dying?
I believe she was. Because that is amazing as well. And she's not the writer on that one, but she, I think, may have been the top billing, so to speak.
Yeah. So her books are, and she's like Selena, where she did a lot of activist. You may be more known for her activist work than her writing, but her writing is pivotal too.
Yeah, she's very much into the ecology and eco-paganism and ecofeminism and things like that. She's very much a feminist, outspoken feminist. She believes that feminism and spirituality are intertwined. And again, she really brought out the goddess movement. She's anti-war. She tries to get people to see the similarities in different cultures and things of that nature, because those differences, pointing out and focusing on the differences is just very divisive, where
Right.
We're all similar, and she tries to point that out and bring that to everybody's forefront. So she did the spiral dance. They staged a public holiday of Samhain in 1979, and that group became the Reclaiming Collective. So they do a lot of work there, very much into nonviolence, environmental movements, permaculture. She's very outspoken. There's a lot of books out there that she's done. I don't see. Yeah, she was with M. Matcha Nightmare doing the Pagan Book of Living Down.
You're freezing.
No,
Are you still there?
You're freezing. You're frozen.
Hello.
Oh, come on.
Uh-oh, we may have lost her.
I can hear you just fine. I can hear you just fine.
And so then we had technical difficulties, and I believe it's my end froze. And so luckily we were pretty much done with the video, and Kathy was able to make sure that we had the film, or we had the video file, so that we can have this video today. So here I am doing the outro. If you enjoyed this video or learned something from it, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. I will link in the description box this top 10 list of elders. And be sure to also check out that description box for any kind of links for social media, for Kathy and for myself. I also want to know, I'm sure that we missed, well, I know that there's numerous elders that we didn't talk about in this video. But if there's somebody that you think that we were like, whoa, you really missed this one, then let us know in the comments section. And be sure to look out for the next top 10 that we're going to do. That's people, and it's another top 10 elders, but it's a little bit more contemporary. And so these are going to be people that are that are post 1990. So be sure to check that out. That will be the next top 10 that you'll see after this one, after we post it, or you know what I'm talking about. Thank you for watching, and thanks for taking the time to walk the path for a little while with me. Until next time, blessed be.